Hey everyone, Synchrony here. I wanted to make a video about the Living Story right now. I'm really excited. I've just been looking through the wiki and watching Wood and Potatoes videos and just trying to take in as much information as possible from the game to see if I could figure out what is going on in the Living Story and what's in store for the future. So today I'm going to be talking about Scarlet, her vision, what she saw, what she has been doing, and why she's teaming up with the Nightmare Court, and kind of all the things, all the pieces of evidence that sort of chain together to bring us to Twilight Arbor and the Nightmare Court and why they're teaming up. I'm going to be talking a lot about Wood and Potatoes video about the Thaumanova reactor, so if you haven't seen that yet, you should definitely check it out. It's a fantastic video, one of my favorite Guild Wars videos. It talks a lot about the Thaumanova reactor and the connections to Scarlet and Living Story. And if you have seen it, then I recommend you watch it again because it's just that good. So I'm going to be touching a little bit on that and just providing you, I think, evidence that people haven't quite looked at yet in regards to the Living Story, and hopefully we'll see some really cool interactions between the different factions in Guild Wars. So first I want to start out with Scarlet's vision. If you remember, there was a short story that came out that ArenaNet released called What Scarlet Saw, and in particular what I want to focus on is Scarlet's connection to the Asura. The Asuran College is the College of Synergetics, which she was particularly captivated by, and she spent a lot of time looking at studying the eternal alchemy. I want to read just this very brief passage from the story. It says, "It was here that under Headmaster Ahmad that Sarah first began to grapple with the eternal alchemy. The deeper she delved into it, the more convinced she became that the pinnacle of Asuran thought was not a metamagical engine or transcendent equation, but a key that allowed one to access the basic fabric of reality itself." So Scarlet had always been fascinated by the way that all beings fit together, and she had a lot of ideas about the interactions between organisms and the systems in nature and things like that. So the eternal alchemy was very attractive to her, and in particular, here we see that the thing that she was most interested in, that the eternal alchemy was something that allowed you to transcend reality itself. So that passage really sets up what Scarlet's motivations are. There's also a part in the passage that she talks about the pale tree and things like that. I'll talk about that a little bit later, but it seems that the short story talks about Scarlet's main motives, her intellectual motives, which for her seems like it's everything. Her intellectual motives are to understand how the world, how natural systems interact and all these things. And so in that pursuit, in the pursuit of understanding that, she came across an idea that the eternal alchemy, kind of the thing that is thought to sort of bind everything together, this kind of system that she's really interested in, is a way to transcend reality. So if we keep that in mind, that is her main motive, to understand that, to access the power of the eternal alchemy. Okay? Now this is where I want to take us back to Wood and Potatoes video about the Thaumanova reactor and the disaster that happened there. If you haven't watched it, I'll just summarize it very briefly. There's a ton of information that it goes through, but just to summarize, the Thaumanova reactor is in Metrica province. There was a huge explosion there, and the blast was so powerful. The release of energy and magic was so powerful that it caused a rift in time and space. It breached time and space, sending personnel and creatures to the outer edges of Tyria. And in various areas of Tyria, there are these kind of strange fluctuations where just weird things happen. So this is really important for Scarlet's story because what Scarlet wanted to study was the eternal alchemy. She came up with an idea that the eternal alchemy is a way to transcend reality, to transcend space and time. She had a vision of that. She had a vision of what that was, but she never actually had the ability to do that. The importance of the Thaumanova reactor explosion showed Scarlet for the first time that transcending time and space was possible, that with enough energy, with the right kind of energy, with enough of that energy concentrated in one spot, you could use that to transcend space and time in very specific ways. So in Scarlet's vision, which we don't actually know what it was, all we know is that in her pursuit of understanding the eternal alchemy, she needs to have the power to transcend space and time. in seeing the Thaumanova reactor explosion, this now opens up a lot of possibilities for Scarlet to pursue the vision that she had, that we saw in the What Scarlet Saw story. So to follow up on her vision, she now needs to control space and time. She needs the power of the Thaumanova reactor. But the Thaumanova reactor exploded. So how do you get the power of the Thaumanova reactor in your hands? Well, you build your own. So just to recap, Scarlet has a vision. We don't quite know what she saw, but in order to achieve whatever reality she saw in her vision, she needs to transcend space and time. How does she do that? Well, she needs to somehow get the power of the Thaumanova reactor and harness it in some way. So where does that power come from? Well, looking back to Wood and Potato's video, he kind of touches on a bunch of different inquest facilities that are related to the Thaumanova reactor. One of these facilities is called the Thaumanova Inquiry Center. It's in the Brisbane Wildlands, southwest region, and just below the Thaumanova Inquiry Center. By the way, the Thaumanova Inquiry Center is where they keep the core, where they kind of develop the power of the Thaumanova reactor. And there's a skill point in the Thaumanova Inquiry Center that describes the power generated there as being very, very powerful, as being more powerful than any other source that they've seen before. Where does that power come from? Well, if we go just south of the Thaumanova Inquiry Center, there's a place called the Toxel Bog, and the inquests are kind of having a conflict with the Dermot Priory about the goings-on down there. Wood and Potatoes talks about this a little bit, but the importance is not the conflict itself, it's what they're fighting about. If you look, there's a renowned heart there where you talk to a Dermot Priory agent, and she talks about why they are studying this area, why they are keeping tabs on the inquest. And it's because the inquest are sapping power from these husks. These husks that have a lot of magical power contained within them. They're sort of scattered around the bog. Now, these husks have some lore behind them. If you search for the word druid in the Guild Wars wiki, you'll see a little bit behind the basis of them. I don't think that contributes a huge amount to this discussion. But they're there. They have a lot of magical energy. They look sort of like oak hearts that you see around Tyria. And so the inquests are sapping energy from this and transferring it into the Thaumanova Inquiry Center to power the core that they have in there. Okay, so the inquests are getting energy from these husks, and there's actually, if you kind of run in the area, you'll see these neutral units, these neutral mobs that are actually inquest officers running back and forth from the Inquiry Center to the bog, back and forth, just kind of showing that they're interested in the place and transferring kind of the energy from one place to another. Alright, so there's that. So the source of the Thaumanova reactor came from these husks. We also see the inquest's interest in these husks in other areas of Tyria. Alright, so just to be clear, the Thaumanova reactor was powered by the super magic energy that was extracted from these husks. Alright, that makes them really important. If Scarlet wants to transcend space and time, she needs the power of the Thaumanova reactor, which means she needs to somehow extract energy from these husk beings, these husk things. So the inquests are sapping energy from these husks in the bog, but they're also gathering these husks through other means. Okay, in Sparkfly Fen, there's actually a dynamic event chain that happens. If you want to watch all of it, you have to fail the entire dynamic event chain if you want to watch all of it, and it takes a while, maybe like 30 minutes at least, where the inquest lure some Sylvari into an isolated area, attack them, and kidnap them. This happens in the southeast region of Sparkfly Fen. The inquest attack these Sylvari and kidnap them. Then they transport them along the eastern side of the map to the north to this cave, and they trade the kidnapped Sylvari to the Nightmare Court in return for a husk. Alright, so the Nightmare Court have access to these husks. The Nightmare Court traded to them. The inquest then take the husk. This is another dynamic event that you should fail if you want to watch it. They take these husks down the eastern side of the map, and then it looks like they're going to a little inquest lab at the bottom right corner, but instead they actually zone out into the Mount Maelstrom map. And the only actual inquest facility in the Mount Maelstrom map, or the primary one, is is actually the Coil of Eternity region in the Mount Maelstrom map, which holds the Crucible of Eternity dungeon. And indeed, if you go into the Crucible of Eternity dungeon, certain paths, you're able to access what's called the Experiment Lab Green, and there are mobs in there that are husks that you have to fight. So clearly the Inquest are investing a huge amount of resources into these husks to experiment on them to gain this energy that they use to power their reactors. And in particular, it seems like it's a particularly powerful energy based on what we saw at the Thaumanova Inquiry Center. Okay, so just relating this back to Scarlet. Scarlet had a vision. Part of realizing this vision is transcending space and time. In order to do that, based on what she saw at the Thaumanova reactor, she needs to somehow harness the power that was contained in the Thaumanova reactor. The Thaumanova reactor was powered by these husks. So if Scarlet wants to have the power to transcend space and time, to breach the fabric of time and space, she needs to extract power from these husks. Now, she can't really access the husks, the stationary husks that were located in the bog below the Thaumanova Inquiry Center. And the other means that the Inquest are going through seem very cumbersome. They actually had to take the time to kidnap Sylvari, transport them to the Nightmare Court in Sparkfly Fen for a single husk. Man, ain't nobody got time for that. Scarlet needs to go to the source of the husk, or rather, where is the highest concentration of husks in all of Tyria? Twilight Arbor. Well, not quite Twilight Arbor, but the swamp nearby where you have the giant jungle worm beta event. If you do the event chain leading up to the jungle worm, there is an NPC named Gamarian, and he's running around trying to kind of do good in the Caledon Forest. And one of the things that you have to do leading up to the jungle worm is fight off a bunch of these husks, like waves and waves of husks. So it's clear that there is a concentration of husks in that area. There's also in the Twilight Arbor Explorable, some of the paths have these husks in there as well. And so it starts making sense then that if Scarlet is trying to breach time and space to access whatever she saw in her vision, we still don't know what that is, but whatever that was, she's trying to gain access to travel through time and space. She needs the power of the Thaumanova reactor, which we see based on Inquest activity that it was powered by these husks. Who has the most direct access to husks? The Nightmare Court. So perhaps, that's basically where I want to end that explanation. That this is why Scarlet is teaming up with the Nightmare Court, because they have access to husks, and she can use the power, the energy stored in those husks to sort of recreate her own Thaumanova reactor and use that power to break through space and time to achieve whatever vision that she had. Okay, so hopefully you guys were able to stick with me there, and I hope a lot of that makes sense. Leave comments and stuff like that. I really want to discuss it. I think it's really cool to talk about it. So I do want to transition into kind of what's next. What does all this mean? There are things that we still don't know. If I'm right about what she's trying to do, it's not clear what the Nightmare Court are getting from Scarlet. What is she giving them? Maybe they're not getting anything. Maybe Scarlet is strong enough to intimidate the Nightmare Court, just like she intimidates the Sky Pirates. We saw in another story that the Sky Pirates don't actually like Scarlet. They're not particularly captivated by her goals or anything like that. They're kind of just scared of her and intimidated. So maybe the Nightmare Court are also in that position. What is Kaith's secret? Scarlet keeps bringing that up in the dungeon. Like, she knows Kaith's secret. We don't know what that is. Surely that will give us some insight as to what happens next, but we just don't know what that secret is. If anyone has ideas, please post in the bottom. Okay, now the next sort of speculative point, and I think there's definitely some evidence for this, and people bring it up all the time, is the jungle dragon, right? And it actually fits in really nicely with the kind of progression of events that I was talking about earlier. The husks themselves. Now, the husks in the bog have kind of their own lore to them, but the other husks that we see, for example, when we fight alongside Gamarian in the event chain leading up to the jungle worm, he keeps talking about this evil that is greater than the Nightmare Court. Part of the event chain is that you have to kind of run out and attack these spots that are called, I think they're patches of blight or blighted ground, something like that, and you have to destroy those areas. And then as the husks start coming up later in the event chain, we see these blighted husks, which are kind of like the veteran style or whatever. They're these bigger husks that you have to take down. So all of this whole time, Gamarian is talking about how there's this kind of resounding evil going on here, an evil that's greater than the Nightmare Court. And even when you destroy the jungle worm at the end of the meta event, he says again, like, that worm, there's something evil about that worm more than the Nightmare Court. And that evil could be a jungle dragon. Now, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but think about the whole event chain leading up to that, the blighted ground, the blighted husks. The only time we see the word blight in Guild Wars is when they're talking about Zaitan. Okay? They're talking about the undead ships, there's all these other units as well, and areas of ore and things like that refer to the blight or something blighted. Okay, so that has a really strong connection there with Zaitan and just Elder Dragons in general. Another thing is, think about the amount of energy that the Inquest put into getting these husks. They built an entire facility around the husks in the bog. They go through all the trouble of kidnapping Sylvari to trade to the Nightmare Court for a single husk. They are very, very interested in these husks. And what's the whole point of the Inquest? Well, the entire existence is to understand what the power of the Elder Dragon is and harness it for themselves, right? So clearly the husks have some connection to the Elder Dragons, otherwise presumably the Inquest wouldn't be spending so much time trying to gain access to them. So that seems like a little bit of a tie-in to the Jungle Dragon. I mean, just in a more meta kind of Guild Wars sense, even Colin Johansson, when he was asked about future Elder Dragons and things like that, he definitely hinted at the Jungle Dragon being something he wanted to see in the future, and this was months ago. So that's just a little thing there. I've seen some other content as well pointing to the Jungle Dragon as being Scarlet's way of just destroying the Pale Tree and the Nightmare Tree. She doesn't want to be a part of this kind of predetermined existence that is presented to Sylvari. And so I've seen some explanations that talk about Scarlet using the Jungle Dragon, or at least the story arc kind of ending in the Jungle Dragon coming up, and hopefully in hopes to destroy kind of the Sylvari predetermined cycle that goes on. So that's something I don't know about that. If anyone knows more about that, please leave it in the comments, discuss it. Alright guys, I think I'm going to cut it off right there. I hit you with a lot of information. It's a lot to take in. I think I've sort of tied it up nicely. If there are any other remaining questions, please ask me in the comments. I will be checking these out. I just want to open up the discussion, see what other kind of variations there are in people's stories, and kind of how you all think it kind of ties together. Why do you think Scarlet is spending time with the Nightmare Court now? Anyways, thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate it. And maybe I'll come up with another video soon. Thank you guys.